Hey, hello, my name is Alexi, and these are the chapters 4, 6, and 7 takeaways for public speaking. And reading these three chapters were pretty interesting to me. Um, for chapter 4, I was initially confused on why they would include this in the reading, in the textbook, like at all. Because it was more about listening. And you're thinking that when you're speaking, you're not going to be really listening to as much as you would think you are, and you think you're going to be you're going to talk more, you're going to present more, and you although it is helpful to feel what it's like on the audience perspective, you think that you'd be more of a speaker. But then reading chapter 6 and 7, it kind of started to make sense. Chapter 4 was more of what it's like to be in the audience's head. So chapter 6 really dwelled into the appeals to the audience based on the characteristics or character traits that the people can be separated into your audience. So for example, the age of your audience, the gender of your audience, the cultural ethnicity, the language, all these different aspects are things that can classify your audience. So for example, one thing that you don't want to do with some audiences is use the same level of English. For example, if you have a younger audience versus an older audience, you would rather use more complex English or whatever language you're presenting in to people who are more native to that language or older and are, again, more native to that language. So age and language origin have a lot of effect on your presentation ability and your presentation skills and and things that you would say in your presentation. See, on the contrary, though, if you have like a younger generation or you're talking to middle schoolers, it is generally easier to just use simpler English to appeal more to them. Since if you're going to start using more complex words, more complex phrases, then they're just going to get confused, not understand what you're saying, and it's just not going to be enjoyable for them, and it's most likely going to be boring. Another aspect that I saw was interesting was instead of hitting on broad topics such as, let's say, like gun violence, healthy eating, boring topics, you try and appeal more to specific niches of topics and stuff specifically concentrated at current events. So, for example, if you want to do gun violence, for example, you can link it to a specific school, maybe in your area that locally had issues with gun violence, or maybe your city had an event recently where it's gun violence, and a lot of people in your audience could really appeal to that, maybe, or they have any connections with people who are involved or seen or heard anything about this in real life. They can have some sort of connection to that. Another thing that's very interesting to me is that they separate male and females. Some think that, men and women are all human, so they must think the same, but usually boys and girls, they like to separate themselves into groups. Therefore, the thinking that happens in their groups is going to be, of course, different. For example, boys think more usually from a younger age, but as people grow older, they start to mix their ideas together and they start to evolve in, you know, in a more well-rounded fashion. But in a younger generations, boys tend to think more logically, more rowdy, while girls are on the opposite, thinking more artsy and craftsy and more, nice and elegantly. Although there are exceptions, of course. I'm not generalizing anything, but usually from my experiences, that's how it is. So I would say that thinking from a boy's perspective and from a girl's perspective is going to be completely different. Another thing that I realized and was pretty interesting to me is the fact that it brought up open-ended questions. So I've seen on a lot of these political debates and a lot of these press conferences that the audience will ask the congressman or the senator questions that it's either yes or no. For example, okay, this was not used in a press conference, but for example, does your mom know you're a smoker? So this question already automatically assumes that you're a smoker, even if you're just going to answer yes or no, despite your answer is still a smoker. So these questions that I saw in the textbook really generalize that, showing that you can also answer in another sort of fashion and it doesn't have to be just a yes or no question. So these are the things that I learned from the chapters 4, 6, and 7, and I really enjoyed reading these, and I feel like I learned a lot. Thank you.